Weekly Dartscast, the best darts podcast going. If you guys like your podcasts and you like your darts, then make sure you listen to the Weekly Dartscast. They're the purists podcast. If you listen to Alex and Burton, they talk about everything. They talk to the pros, they talk to the pros on the tour, the old BDO, they talk to management, they talk to darts manufacturers, proper interesting stuff, so give them a listen.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Dartscast, the start of a new season for this show, our 5th season. Thank you for joining us again. I'm Alex Moss and my regular co-host Burton DeWitt, not here this week as he's sulking because Mark Walsh didn't win Legend of the Year in our awards, or he's just busy with work commitments, one of the two, but I'm delighted to say, stepping in as guest co-host this week, we have our very own producer, Hanna. Thank you very much for joining us, Hanna. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, and I'm helping fulfill our one American per podcast quota as standard. Yeah, holding up pretty well, and holding up even better because my American football team is made it to the semifinals. Woo. Anyway, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. Glad to hear about that, and we've got a busy show for you guys. Hopefully going to make up for being off there last week, but we'll start off with a topic which has been dominating the world of darts, well, at least for us anyway, and that was the first ever Weekly Dartscast Awards that we held over the last few weeks. The winners were announced at the weekend as well, and let's start off with a few of the big award winners, if you like. We saw Gerwyn Price win Player of the Year, Keen Barry Young Player. Match of the Year went to Michael van Gerwen and Joe Cullen at the World Championship, and Guest of the Year to Dave Clark. But what about yourself, Hanna? Did you go for those four as well, or did you go differently?
As we all know from my nominations, considering we told people who everybody nominated, only one of my nominations won, and I think it was because who's going to argue with Dave Clark being Guest of the Year, honestly. Figured that would be a landslide. Glad I got my name in the hat first for that one, and just, clear cut. Didn't get to see the count on the other ones, because obviously the access to the poll was hidden, so that Burton couldn't create a million email addresses, but I had the Player of the Year being Dimitri. I'm such a Dimitri Vandenberg fan. He's so smiley and happy, like, all the time. And I've always said this about people, that I just love people who love what they're doing. Martin Schindler always used to be a big smiley guy in terms of things. He's gotten a little more serious over time. Dimitri still has that smiling edge to him. Devin Peterson's got that smile. They just are happy to be playing darts. So with his World Match Play win, I was really going for him for Player of the Year. I understand why he didn't get it, but I am still heartbroken over it. Young Player of the Year, I went something I thought might do a little bit better, which was Bradley Brooks. No slight on Keen Barry, who got to interview earlier in the year before everything went to heck, who's a fantastic player, but I figured Bradley Brooks has had a heck of a year for getting back his tour card by beating Damon Hedda, especially after the year that Damon was having, and with his beating Joe Davis in the PDC Youth Championship, and then making it to the Worlds. Who knows how far he could have come if he hadn't hit the Aubergines in the form of his life. So I really thought we might see a little bit more toward that. But again, I understand Keen Barry 100%. And then my match of the year was Merv beating MVG 6-1 on the Euro Tour, because it was a great day for the Merverts. And who doesn't love seeing Merv do good things at his age? And what a year he had as well. And there was so little Euro Tour, and it holds such a special place in my heart. It was just a huge moment overall. Don't know where that came in the running, but I understood that I had a few maybe less than popular picks in the running after seeing everybody else's, so I accept my win for guest Dave Clark.
A well-deserved win, and I'll go in reverse order then and start with that Guest of the Year. And as you say, Dave Clark was your nominee, and I was always going to nominate Coach Stompy, wasn't I? Because we were very fortunate to finally get him on the show. Been trying for a long time, and we ended up chatting to him a couple of times during the year. Bit of a bromance going on now with him because he sent me one of his shirts as well, so really appreciate that from Co. But I was pleased as well to get Dave Clark on, because he's another person that we've wanted to get on the show for a long time, and had a lovely chat with him just before the start of the PDC World Championship. It was the first one that he wasn't going to be doing since he left Sky in the summer. So yeah, I fully understand why our listeners have voted for him. But I want to say as well, 2020 was probably our best year for guests. We had so many different people on during the year. We did our Darts Legends series. Dave was part of that series. and we spoke to so many different players, so many different people involved in darts. So that was a very competitive category, I think, and Dave fully deserved getting that title, and congratulations to him. Match of the year, I was a little bit surprised on this one, actually, because just looking back on how it worked out, 76% going with that Michael van Gogh and Joe Cullen game. I thought it was going to be a little bit closer than that. I personally went with Simon Whitlock, 16, Michael van Gogh, and 15 from the Grand Slam. And really, that day of darts, if we were going to do a day of the year, that Grand Slam quarterfinal day, there was 4 brilliant quarterfinals that we saw on that day, and that was one of them. So that got my vote. I might have thrown in the Michael van Gogh and Mervyn King final from the Players' Championship finals, which also went to a deciding leg. That was a really fun game to watch. Young Player of the Year, my nominee was Keane Barry. I thought across the whole year he had a brilliant 2020. You mentioned he won the BDO World Youth Championship, beat Leighton Bennett 3-0 in that final, and that was one of the games that we were all looking forward to watching. We thought it was going to be a lot closer than that, but Keane done a job on him. 3-0 whitewash win. He's then gone on. He's won events on the development tour, the Challenge Tour. He's of course won his tour card from the development tour. We've seen him in his second PDC World Championship, and only 18 years of age. He's going to be one to watch a star for the future, maybe even the present this year. And finally, Player of the Year, Gerwyn Price. Funnily enough, the biggest winner across our 17 awards, 78% of the vote. And I know that the PDC are doing their own fans Player of the Year. There's something like 14 or 15 options. I think the voting's finished now, but I know there's the perception of Gerwyn Price among some darts fans and sports fans. It is changing. I think there's more people that are getting behind him now after what we've seen from him the last 12 months, but I think he's a fully deserved Player of the Year just across 2020, even before when he won the World Championship and become the new world number one a few weeks ago now, winning the World Grand Prix, winning the World Series finals, the World Cup, won the most titles out of anyone on the PDC senior circuit during the season. Dimitri Van den Berg definitely deserves to be in that list of nominees, of course, for winning the World Match Play, and he was one of many players to have a good year, perform really well at various parts of the year, the likes of Glenn Durrant, Jose de Souza, Michael van Gogh, of course, winning the title, Peter Wright winning a couple of titles on TV. So I think out of all of them, Gerwyn Price was a fully deserved winner for our first Player of the Year.
Agreed. And all the winners of the awards were decided by the listeners and their votes, and Burton and a few of his votes. I actually was too busy working, so I didn't get to vote, although I would have actually voted against a few of my nominees in the end. But were there any results in there that surprised you overall?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to everyone that did vote. We had loads of the listeners get involved and take the time out. It wasn't just a Twitter poll that we ran for every single award. We made sure that anyone that did want to vote, they had to vote for all 17 categories. So it was the most comprehensive awards out there for darts, I think. So appreciate everyone that took the time out to vote across all the awards. But I think the listeners overall did a good job. I know a lot of the nominees were from us. We put forward 3 of the 4, and then the 4th spot we picked from what the listeners nominated. But I think overall, the guys and girls that listen to the show, they've done a good job. Maybe there's a couple that I'd have looked at differently. The tournament of the year, maybe there was a bit of recency bias. We had 2/3 of the vote go to the PDC World Championship. My vote personally was for the Grand Slam, which finished up second with 18%. I thought that might have been a little bit closer, but looking back on Ali Pali now, we've had a few weeks to reflect on it. There were a lot of close games, and a lot of that was down to taking out the tie-break rule, and the 5th leg of the final set was the final leg, so a lot more closer games and drama all the way, even up to the final. I know the final score was 7-3 to Gerwyn Price against Gary Anderson, but Gerwyn Price at the end, the mismatched starts, it was his 12th match start to get over the line, so it kept you gripped all the way through. Was he going to get over the line, which he eventually did? But the other one I'd mention as well, tip of the year, I think I had that sewn up with Dale Gurney, the handicapper's nightmare, surviving Judgment Night in the Premier League after that long break, coming back and going above or crossing the table, but Burton just nipping it at the end with our final show of the season, tipping Dave Chisnall to beat Michael van Gogh in the World Championship. I think that was you can't really argue with that. That was a great tip from him. And I just want to say as well, it's the first time that we've done our awards. It's probably the most comprehensive one out there. We had loads of different awards: Manager of the Year to Mac Elkin, Commentator to Dan Dawson, Manufacturer to Win Mal, Legend to Paul Lim, Checkout, Miscount, both going to Jose de Souza. I thought it was good that we were able to give a bit of recognition, not just to the players, but anyone else involved in darts, all the people that are involved behind the scenes. So just want to say again, thanks everyone who voted, and hopefully we'll come back in 12 months' time and make it even bigger and better than this one.
And I'd say there wasn't many surprises for me. The only one that really probably surprised me, and that's mainly because I do not agree with it at all, is could the Matthew Edgar fans please just stay on Edgar TV and not give him Shirt of the Year? He's a good guy. We all get it. He's fun to watch. We all get it. His shirt is obnoxious as all heck, and he did not deserve that title. We should have nominated him for something else so he could have enjoyed that. He's a fantastic player. His home setup was fantastic with all his Edgar TV banners. Maybe we should have done that. I don't understand. Obviously, Makaru Suzuki has the best shirt in the game. Don't care. Going to argue with that until the day I die. I will fight him on this.
And now we'll move on to our first guest on this week's show, and it is with the former BDO World #1, former BDO World Championship finalist, and a man who's kept his tour card 65th on the PDC Order of Merit, Mark McGeeney. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the former BDO #1, Mark McGeeney. Thanks very much for your time, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And there's only one place to start as we head into the new season, and that is yourself, 65th on the PDC Order of Merit after your 2 years with your tour card, but you keep hold of your tour card as Harry Ward handed his in. First off, what was the feeling like when you got that email from the PDC to say that you don't have to go back to Q School?
Relief. A lot of relief. I mean, I had a really bad 2020 on the dartboard. Didn't play well at all. Confidence went, and I really just scraped in the skin of my teeth, but, I'll take it anytime.
What was it like following what was going on at the World Championship? I know there was various permutations that could have knocked you below that 65th spot. Were you aware of them, and how hard was it with your fate out of your hands during that time?
Yeah, it was horrible. I mean, I was watching all the darts from the Ali Pally. I knew the situation, and it all came down in the end to Danny Baggish against Glenn Durrant. If Danny had won that one and won his next game, then I would have been out. So when Glenn won, he really did me a big favour there. But it made me realise that, after a bad season, I'm going to work out and make sure I'm not in that situation again, because it was absolutely horrible watching it, knowing that I could lose my tour card. It's out of my hands. And
even after Glenn knocks out Danny and you are safe in that spot, were you still a little bit nervous in case Harry had a change of heart and decided to carry on?
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was seeing on his Facebook and seeing if he'd changed his mind around, because he was quite entitled to, really. He's played well the last 2 years and deserves to keep his tour card, but he actually resigned it. And then on January the 1st, I got the email from the PDC saying that due to Harry Ward resigning his tour card, that I've kept mine. So it was a great way to start the year.
And looking back, it's been a little while since we last had you on the show. I remember chatting to you just before the 2019 UK Open, and you mentioned Nathan Aspinall lived 10 minutes away from you. You were going to try and practice together. He, of course, went on to win that tournament. Did you guys get to practice after that at all?
We practiced a little bit, but then he got called into the Premier League, because the only time we could really fit it around his schedule and my schedule was Thursday nights. And, of course, when he got into the Premier League, and he done fantastic well in there, he couldn't really practice anymore. But, we're still keeping in touch, and he's still a good mate, mine.
Good to hear. Well, looking back at 2019, you had a semi-final in the Players' Championships fairly early on. Of course, you made a few appearances on the European Tour and the debut at the end of the season at the Alexandra Palace. What was that experience like, playing in your first PDC World Championship? I think you were on the Saturday night first game of that session.
Yeah, I was on Saturday night, 7 o'clock against Matt Campbell. I've never been so nervous in my life for a darts match. I don't normally get nervous, but when I was actually practicing, I was nervous and nothing would sort of calm me down. And all of a sudden, one of my management teams, Mr. Tommy Gilmore, he stepped in, had a little chat with me. Gary was there, Anderson, and he had a little chat, and that just calmed me down then. And I just went out there and I could focus, and he was like, let's go and play darts now.
Yeah, you mentioned a few of the guys there. You're part of a great team at Dunvegan Enterprises under Tommy and Stephanie Gilmore. You mentioned you've got Gary Anderson, Chris Dobie in there. You're part of Unicorn as well. How important was it having their backing when you made the switch over to the PDC?
It was everything to me. It really was everything. I mean, they have been absolutely brilliant to me. I can't thank them enough. And long may it continue. I'm going to start winning now, and I'll do them proud. And they've put so much time and effort into me. Both Tommy and Stephanie and the whole Dunvegan team, and they've been amazing. And without them, I couldn't have done what I've done at the start. Last year was a bad year, but I'm going to put that right, and I'll be all right next year.
We'll come on to last year in a moment, but you said your goal in your first year was to get to Ali Pally. You did that. What was the first year like for you, adjusting from playing in the BDO to the PDC, as chatting to other players before? It can take a little bit of time to adjust.
Yeah, I mean, they said it wouldn't happen overnight. I wouldn't have the success that I would have done in the BDO. But I loved every second of it. I've always been about challenging myself and stepping up and trying different things. And this was a natural move for me. And it's a lot harder. I remember I played Derwin Price in my very first game in the PDC. And I stood behind him. He had 257 left. And he finished it in 5 darts. And I thought to myself, I'm not in the BDO anymore. But I loved it. I loved every single second of it. All the players, all the officials have been so nice to me. And they've been absolutely brilliant. The BDO was a great experience for me. This is just now carried it on, and I'm loving every second of being in the PDC and proud to be in the PDC.
Looking back at 2020, of course, we had the tour shut down just after the UK Open. When the lockdown came, darts-wise for you, was it a good time to reset? How did you look at that period when it came about?
It came at the right time for me, believe it or not, because I'd lost to Ricky Evans at Ali Pali, 3-1 sets, and it showed me that I didn't play well, and that was what showed me. So I thought, I've worked hard between Christmas and the start of the new season. Was looking forward to the new season, and then it just didn't go according to plan. I kept losing first round, and when it came to the break, I thought it was coming at the right time for me. I didn't realise I don't think anyone did, how long this lockdown would have gone on for, but at the time, it came at the right time for me, just to get my confidence back, get a bit of practice, worked on a few different things, and I did that, but it was just hard. And I think all the players were in the same boat as me, not knowing when we're playing, due to government restrictions on this horrible COVID virus. So it was a difficult season. I think everyone suffered from it.
Definitely. Well, the PDC returned in July, and a trimmer version of Mark McGeeney turned up to Milton Keynes as well. You lost 6 stone during those 4 months. We saw a few players like yourself do that. Adrian Lewis, Michael Smith. What prompted you to go and lose the weight?
When I put myself on the weighing scales just before Christmas 2019, and I was 20 and a half stone, and I thought, it's been a very, very, very long time since I was that, and I didn't like it, so I thought I am going to lose all the weight. And since July, I've lost another half stone, so I'm 14 now. But I'm happy with that. I feel better at July time in Milton Keynes. I felt really weak. I think I did it too fast, but I've now sort of recovered it and balanced my diet out a lot more, and I feel a lot better for it now. It's just nice not being the person I was.
It's a fantastic effort, and got to ask as well, how did you do it? Was it diet, more exercise, bit of both? How did it happen?
No, I didn't start exercising until July, but it was just diet. It was just watching my calories and cutting out all the junk food, and that's how I did it. Normally, I'd limit myself to 1,000 calories a day, and it worked for me. But now I'm starting to exercise a bit more, build my strength up, build my stamina up. I'm practicing my darts as well, so everything's going according to plan now.
Excellent. Well, I remember Glenn Durrant joked that he'd lost 1 pound in weight during the first lockdown, and he was hoping it would improve his game. But how did you find it coming back after that break and playing in the summer series again after losing the weight?
Different. What I didn't realise, and what I should have realised at the time, is my fingers have got thinner, so I couldn't grip the dart in the right place. I got into the Unicorn, and they made me a slightly heavier set of darts. I've gone from 22 grams to 24 grams. I mean, Unicorn have been absolutely amazing with me. They really have. They've helped me out at every course. So I've now got my new 24-gram darts, and they seem to be working really well. I'm pleased with the way they're going. They're slightly thicker darts with the extra weight, but it helps me grip them a bit more. So, everything's going according to plan at the moment.
As you mentioned, 2020 was a bad year for you on the dartboard in terms of your results, but you were going to come back and work hard, come back stronger. How have you spent the last 7 or 8 weeks since we saw the PDPA qualifiers and the last time that we saw you in the PDC?
All I've done is I go to work, because I still obviously work, but I come home from work, I exercise, I eat the right foods, and I practice every day now. I'm on the practice board for at least 2.5, 3 hours a day. I start time longer, obviously, on weekends when I don't have to go to work, but I'm not just throwing darts at the board, I'm actually doing specific things, whether we're working on finishing, set-up shots, mentality, or things like that. So my practice now seems to have a bit of a purpose. I'm focusing a lot more, working on my concentration, and trying to build my confidence back up, because my confidence did take a massive hit last year in 2020, so I'm building that back up, and hopefully when the season starts, I'll be ready for it.
I know you mentioned there you're working away from the darts as well. Is that something that came about because of the lockdown last year, or have you always juggled work and darts even since getting your tour card?
No, I've always worked. I've been at this company now for nearly 8 years, and I've worked all my life, so I can't sit at home doing nothing. I enjoy the work. It keeps my mind occupied as well, and the company I work for is a great company to work for. So yeah, it's something I've always done, and it's not hard to adjust, and I can fit work and darts around it. Anytime I need off to go to work day to go and play darts, the company have been brilliant to me. They always let me have the time off, and yeah, without their support, it'd be more difficult.
Good to well. Before we let you go, we should give a mention to where you came from, of course, the BDO. And I remember being at the last Lakeside, and you stuck around for a few days after you lost to say goodbyes before going to Q School. A lot of memories: the World Final, 2 Masters finals, some big titles. What moments will stick with you from that time?
Lakeside is a place I miss. It was an iconic venue, and for me, it was the home of darts. Just to walk in the venue, all the great names that have ever played in that venue. On that stage, it's really special. I mean, the games that obviously stick out for me was the game against Scott Mitchell, my first year. I think that was 2016, second round game, and what a battle that was. Scott beat me, but it was on the last leg decider. And then, of course, the final in 2018 against Glendoran, where I missed double 18 to win it, the whole lot, and that still wrangles with me. But good, bad, indifferent, it's all great memories from Lakeside, and I hope that one day some sort of darts can return there, because it deserves it. It's an iconic venue, it's an iconic stage, and I know the fans loved it, and everyone watched it on TV. So yeah, it's sad that it's not there anymore, but hopefully one day some sort of darts can return there.
Definitely agree with you there. And I asked Stephen Bunting this on our last show. Do you take much notice in what's going on at the semi-pro amateur level, everything underneath the PDC? We've got MAD, WDF, UKDA, when we are allowed to go out and play again and put these big opens on. Do you see a bright future for that side of darts?
Yeah, I do. I think the future's in good hands now of darts. I always keep an eye on it, and I think it's where everyone started off, really. So it means a lot to me. I've got a lot of good friends over there. The players over there are amazing players, they really are. And they could all make it into the PDC without a problem, I don't think so. But yeah, I keep an eye on it, and I think the future now is bright. They're starting to get their act together and starting to get things sorted out, and hopefully they'll be able to run tournaments and get back to where they were.
Definitely. Well, Mark, thanks very much for taking out the time to have a chat with us. Always appreciate it, and wish you all the best for the 2021 season when it does get up and running.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for naming me guest of the year on the Dartscast Awards. Really proud of that. Amazing still think I have something interesting to say after all these years of blathering on. But hopefully you have a great 2021. It can't be much worse than 2020, can it? Looking forward to some great darts, and most of all, looking forward to you, the crowds, getting back in the venues and enjoying the darts. See you soon. I salute you. Barney style. Cheers.
Thanks again to Mark for joining us. Now let's look ahead to Q School. 668 players have signed up for this year's Q School, which is due to start 2 weeks on Monday. Looks like it's going to get the go-ahead. Could you see any other stumbling blocks coming the PDC's way to stop it going ahead in 2 weeks' time?
I mean, more stumbling blocks and the fact that literally nobody in the UK is supposed to be outside of their house unless they have to for business, and that nobody is supposed to travel at all. Hard to think of what other stumbling blocks there could be. The world actually physically ending, Dolphins taking over Milton Keynes. I don't know what to expect from 2021, but I think it's obviously the best place to have it. The fact that they've got the hotel attached in Milton Keynes. Don't know exactly what the situation's like in Niederhausen right now, but in terms of the actual English one, it's the best place because you can test people coming in, you can have people not have to be outside and exposed to other people throughout the course of that. But you still have to travel. You still have to get there. It's centrally located, yes, but again, people aren't supposed to be traveling anywhere. They're not supposed to be going anywhere unless it's their job. And while everybody might be hoping that this means that this will become their job, we know statistically that it's not going to be. So in terms of could there be any more stumbling blocks? Of course there could be. Do I know what those stumbling blocks could be at this point? Literally, fish might march out of the ocean and walk their way to Milton Keynes. Who knows? But good on them for trying, and good on them for, trying to keep as many things going as they have done. It would be real tempting to shift it, but if you want people to be able to participate in things like the Pro Tour, especially if they do a home tour type format, you're going to need to have those cards given out. And if we have to wait until March, April, May, June, whenever things get under control enough, Lord knows how much time there would be for it. So I understand why they're trying to go ahead. I understand that it's a big process. I think they've done a lot of effort to make sure it's as safe as possible. But more stumbling blocks? Holy heck, could there be? Of course. Will there be? I feel like they have all the stumbling blocks that I can physically think of right now outside of literally the dolphin one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's 10 years ago this month that we had the first ever Q School 2011, and the likes of Dave Chisnall, Devon Peterson, John Henderson all winning their tour cards. And you look back 10 years ago, that was probably a lot that went into organising that event for the first time. Fast forward to 2021 though, and this is probably going to be the most difficult Q School to organise and make sure it all goes ahead as planned and without any problems. As we know, we've just seen the list of players come out a couple hours ago now. Who's going to be playing? Who's going to be playing in the first stage? Who's going to be playing in the second stage? And yes, the numbers are less than they were 12 months ago. In 2020, we had a record 800 plus players across the UK and the Euro Q School, and we knew there was going to be less players this year because of all the restrictions with the virus, the pandemic that's still going on. But 668 is still a fairly good number considering, and I know that number is going to end up being less because there are a few players on that list that aren't going to be going. They've already said privately or whatever they're not going to be going. They're not going to be competing for those tour cards. And the PDPA last week put out an update and said that all the players that have entered, they've now got to stay in the same hotel, whether it be in Milton Keynes or in Germany, and they've got to book via the PDC as well. Even if they've booked that hotel already, they've got to cancel it and then sign up via the PDC. So they're trying to get everything sorted, make sure that there's no stone left unturned for them. And even people that are flying into the UK to play in the UK one, they've got to show a negative COVID test no more than 72 hours before they left. I think in Germany it's 48 hours, and the PDPA have said as well that there is probably going to be some testing going on for the event as well. So I think it is going to get the go-ahead. We are going to be talking about Q School in 2 or 3 weeks' time and following all the results on Dart Connect, who's going to get the tour cards. But you've got to say that the PDC have done well to bring in this new format, stretch it out across longer, and make sure that we don't have the 300, 400 players in the venue at the same time. There is going to be, I think the maximum we'll see is 183 for the first block of the UK Q School, and then we'll end up with 120 for the final stages. So they are limiting the numbers that are going to be in the venue at the same time, which is good. And yeah, we've just got to have our fingers crossed that we are going to be all good to go in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and all the players are able to play and fight for those tour cards.
And the good news for the PDC this week was the news that ITV have extended their deal at least till the end of 2021. How important do you think that news is for darts?
Yeah, I think it's very important. And for me personally, growing up watching the darts, it was BBC, watching the Lakeside, watching the World Masters, and then when ITV started showing darts again, 2007 with the Grand Slam, and then other events after that, that was the only way that I was able to watch darts at that time. I didn't have Sky at home. The only chance I'd get to watch Sky is if I went round my grandparents' house, and nowadays I'm able to watch it, but not everyone does have that access to watch Sky or have a subscription or by any other means to watch those big events. And you've got to say that the money that Sky put in, the coverage that they produce for the big events like the World Championship, Premier League, World Match Play, they've now got the Grand Slam. It's unquestioned how important that is, but as far as making darts accessible to a wider audience, having it on free to air, it's huge. And ITV, I think they do a great job with their coverage. They've got the Masters coming up next week. You've got the UK Open, European Championship Players Championship Finals, the World Series. They show a lot of them on tape delay, and they show the finals at the end of the year as well. And in particular, the UK Open, I think they do such a great job of covering that, the multi-boards, the board 1, board 2, all the drama of that first day, and throughout that weekend, telling all the different stories that are going on. I think that is one of the best weekends for darts, and ITV, their coverage is superb. And as I say, making sure that it is available free to air during the year, not just maybe for one weekend a year, is really important. I've had various stories of my friends often mention a game of darts that they watched at the weekend on ITV. Did you see that game? Did you see that player do that? And they don't have Sky, and they stumble across watching it, flicking through the channels, and they might watch the odd game or two. But I'm thinking people that are stumbling across it and watching it, and then maybe becoming darts fans, looking out for it during the year, maybe watching it on PDC TV or watching it on YouTube and becoming followers of the game, it's big. And ITV, they've got a lot of coverage during the year. I think it's around 25, 30 days a year. It's very important. So well done to the PDC, and looking forward to seeing more events on ITV starting next week.
And also, one of the things that, obviously, with the pandemic being around, that makes this extra special news is free to air is super important now, because you see more and more people have lost their jobs. More and more people have industries that have been steeply affected, and even people that are furloughed at 80% are making, budget cuts. So I've seen a number of people that I know who are canceling their Sky Sports packages because you need to tighten the belt somewhere because COVID has affected the economy so strongly. And the first thing to go is things that are unnecessary, like your Sky Sports package. So you might not have access to that and that. So the free to air is always important, as we saw when another sport like cricket moved away from free to air. It seemed almost like the interest dropped off. And then now that there's an occasional match on free to air, people have a chance to see it again. There's the even more so, recency of what is financially going on all over the world that makes the concept of free to air literally the only darts that some darts fans might have access to throughout the year. We don't have a TV, so we can watch ITV on the iPlayer. We can't watch Sky Sports unless we borrow somebody else's login, which we don't know anybody that has a login anymore. And that's us. And we weren't negatively financially affected by the pandemic. So it really might be more than just a matter of, we might get some new fans. It might be, we can keep this fresh in the mind of old fans who are on tighter belts than normal. So it's perfect timing for it, and hopefully, considering it might take a while for everything to spring back, hopefully they carry on beyond 2022, but we shall see. For now, it's good news for the year ahead. And now, our next interview is with, speaking of, ITV and Sky Sports commentator, Stuart Pyke.
I'm delighted to say I'm joined once again by the ITV and Sky Sports commentator, Stuart Pyke. Thanks again for the time, Stuart. How are you doing?
Yeah, no problem. Enjoying a few days at home, feet up, sorting out stuff, trying to lose a stone in weight. So that's my priority at the moment before we get started with the Masters next week.
Well, good luck with that. And it's almost been 3 weeks since the World Championship came to an end. The Masters, as you mentioned, almost upon us. What have you been up to over the last few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting, hasn't it, since the World Championship? I mean, that was just a phenomenal event, considering all the circumstances, but we had the crowd and it was taken away after one night, but the players just carried on performing, as if it was the Ali Pali packed full of 3,500 people. I think most people have, since the Worlds, have just had time to reflect a little on what's going on in the world and what's going on in the world of sport and the world of darts, and as I say, just a bit of downtime before we start thinking about the 2021 season and who it's important for and who's going to do what, and prediction times and all the rest of it. Of course, the name on everybody's lips at the moment is going with Price, and quite deservedly so.
And when we last had you on the show, it was in the midst of the run of Premier League nights that we had behind closed doors. You did some of the World Match Play as well, but how did you find those first few events with no fans there?
I think it was very difficult for everybody involved, to be honest with you. I mean, the whole crew made it what it was, and it was a success. I think the Premier League was difficult to carry off on night after night after night. Durham wasn't complaining about that, was he? But I think the whole setup and the way that things were done just reflected on the hard work that everybody was prepared to put in and the sacrifices that everybody was prepared to make, you know, from testing to isolation, not mixing, you know, very little social contact, going up there, playing darts, going home, going to a hotel. You think for the PDC staging crew, you know, who are away from home for very long periods of time because they have to keep rejigging various venues just to get the whole thing on. But I think the PDC led from the front and the broadcasters followed. And in that respect, I think it's great that we've managed to have as much darts as we have since the match play resumption in the middle of July.
Behind closed doors, darts that have become the norm during 2020. The crowd are a big part of the PDC product. Not having them there, did you feel any added pressure when you're commentating in any way, or did it help as the sole focus was on the game and the players?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we all want the crowds there. You know, we're all brutally honest. It's a very different way of working. You know, you have two commentary boxes, three commentary positions in each of them, just to give you a little insight. And you know, you have to stick to your commentary position. Everybody has their own set of headphones, their own lip mic, and it's basically one man in one box. So it's split over 6 commentary positions on Sky. And what happens is that when you're in, the other 2 boxes are well protected, you know, by plastic coverings. You do your game. There's all sorts in there that you need, from hand gel to wipes and water. You do your game, you get out, and then the next person comes in. But I think that the thing we would all say is that we want the crowds back. I mean, there was a huge uplift in optimism, you know, when we found out there was going to be 1,000 people a night or a session at the Ali Pali. I mean, it brought a smile to everybody's faces, and those smiles lasted just one night. But it's the way of the world, you know, and I think darts has certainly led from the front in getting things done, despite all the problems that this wretched virus has thrown up.
Despite there being no fans, it's fair to say we were a sport with great games to watch on TV last year. And one day I want to bring up in particular the quarterfinals day in the Grand Slam. 2 sessions, all 4 games were superb. Can you recall a better 2-session day of televised darts than that one?
No, and I think, well, actually, I think that there was the quarter-final day at the Ali Pali was something special, to be honest with you, this year. I mean, we saw a lot of really, really good games. They just go to show what the players have done. I mean, they have risen to the occasion. Yeah, there is pipe crowd noise going into the arena, you know, which I actually think helps with the atmosphere, and it just helps the players, you know, crack on with what they're doing. But I think I said way back, that certainly in terms of figures and stats and averages, quality and performances, the World Match Play, the World Grand Prix, the Grand Slam, the World Series, the European Championship, they're all, in terms of quality, better than what we saw 12 months ago, and that says it all.
We just had our own awards on the show, and for me it was between that Michael Van Gerwen Son Whitlock quarter-final in the Grand Slam and maybe the Van Gerwen King Players Championship final for Game of the Year. Our listeners ended up voting for Michael Van Gerwen Joe Cullen from the Worlds, which was another fantastic game. What were your highlights from 2020?
Well, I think Michael Van Gerwen against Joe Cullen, I mean, it says it all for me. I mean, I've been lucky enough, very lucky, to be doing this for nearly 18 years now. 2003 I first started at the World Match Play in Blackpool, and then everyone, the sport has come a long way since then, but certainly in the top 3 for me in terms of drama, entertainment, skill, bottle, you know, passion, the whole thing, you know, and you know, I think the viewing figures bore out the success of the World Championship, you know, 1 million plus for the last few days, 1.5 million for the final, I think. But that for me was just classic sport. It wasn't just sort of darting entertainment, it was just sheer sporting drama. And I think me and John Parr hopefully managed to get over just how good and how exciting it was. I think my old Canadian mate was going to spontaneously combust at one stage. But you know, but that's the game. You know, if I think the best compliment that John and I were paying over that was that we were commentating as fans, and that's true. You know, forget everything else. We were just like everybody else who loves the sport. We were darts fans, lucky enough to be commentating on one of the great darts games. Absolutely,
and at the end of the tournament, we have a new world champion, and for the first time in 7 years, a new world number one in Gerwyn Price. I remember you called in Price's 1-60 against Ian White, the UK Open 2017. When did you start to think this guy could do big things in the PDC?
Probably about 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I just love his attitude. I think he knows, everybody knows, that he overstepped the mark. He crossed a very big line with his behaviour at the Grand Slam in 2018 against Gary Anderson. Anderson let it get to him. Price won the game. You know, but it's probably the least satisfying victory for anyone in the darts major for a long, long time. But fair play to him. He's reined it in a little. You know, and he's actually a good guy. You know, people might not know he's very shy, but he has to play with that passion. You know, the heart on the sleeve. That's what the sport wants. I don't think he should rein it in that much. You know, if that's the way he plays, that's the way he plays. You know, you look at the controversy of what Menzies Sullivan did in his game with Gary Anderson at the World Championship, which was just silly, to be honest with you. It affected him more than it affected Gary Anderson at the end of the day. But Gerwyn Price is exactly what you get on the tin. You know, he exemplifies, you know, the love and the passion that he has for the sport. You know, I mean, as you well know, I mean, I'm very passionate about my rugby league as well, and you know, Price played rugby league for a little while before Barry Bates somehow persuaded him to go to Q school. You know, but he's talked the talk, and he's certainly walked the walk, and you know, he came through some real scrapes and some last leg deciders. But I just think in the final, Gary ran out of steam. I remember saying in the early stages, may well have been the first set of commentary with Mark Webster, that I think that if Gary Anderson, you know, hits his doubles and spot on with his finishing, then he'll be very difficult to beat. But Gary just couldn't hit those doubles, ran out of steam, and Price grew in confidence. You know, a worthy world champion, a worthy world number one, and what a story. You know, what a story. Nigh on 7 years after he managed to get his tour card at Q School, he's a world champion. That just shows to everybody who's got ambitions what can be done. But yeah, a great world champion, and it's garnered a lot of publicity for our sport since. So yeah, best player won without a doubt. Well done, Gerwyn Price.
Agreed. Well, let's look ahead. Difficult times at the moment with this lockdown, but we're fortunate that we've got the Masters going ahead next week behind closed doors at Milton Keynes, and a change to the format from the top 16 to the top 24. What do you make of the change?
The jury's out, I think. I mean, we're going to find out when the event actually gets underway. But the Masters for me has always been about the elite top 16. And, you know, the PDC have never been backward in coming forward in advocating change and doing things differently. So I applaud them for that. But we'll see. You know, we'll see how it works out at Milton Keynes. But I think it's going to be a very significant event. You know, obviously there's no ranking points on it. But for lots of people, but for me, the most important person of all, and we'll just see how 2021 is going to shape, will be Michael van Gerwen. You know, the pressure's on him, and he said he's ready. He said he's had a break. He can't wait to get back at it. But a really disappointing year in 2020, the way that he was walloped by Dave Chisnall, inspired Dave Chisnall, it has to be said, at the World Championship. It embarrassed him. It hurt him. He felt humiliated. And he went back to Holland with his tail very much between his legs. So he has a lot to prove. Let's see if he can. Of course, the spotlight will be on Gerwyn Price, and I think very much like last year with Peter Wright, when he plays his first game, and it'll send a tingle up his spine, and those hairs on the back of the neck will stand up when John McDonnell introduces him as the champion of the world. I mean, that's just a magical moment. I remember Peter Wright saying that he was very emotional. He had tears in his eyes when John McDonnell introduced him as the world champ 12 months ago. course, it didn't do him any harm. He went on to win the Masters as well. So a big tournament for many of them, but especially for me, for Michael Van Gerwen.
You mentioned Dave Chisnall as well. He could be the answer to my next question. Of course, the PDC have kept one spot in the Premier League free. They're waiting to see how the Masters plays out. Right now, if you had 50p, who would you say is the favourite for that spot?
I would say Chizzy. I think Chizzy. Don't forget he should have reached the Premier League final. It was about 4 years ago, when he missed those darts to beat Gary Anderson. But I think that from what he showed at the World Championship, he's the right man for the job. But I think the beauty, one of the good things about them opening it out to 24 players, is that what the PDC is saying is, right, we've given you a chance to play the Masters, we've also given you another chance to play the spot in the Premier League. And I think that would be a really interesting look over the 3 days in Milton Keynes. But I would say, as it stands, before a dart's thrown, Chizzy would be worth my 50p.
Two more before we let you go, and off the hockey, great news this week about ITV extending their deal with the PDC until at least the end of 2022. How crucial is it that darts has that free-to-air coverage available during the year?
Well, absolutely. I think ITV have done a really, really good job, as have Sky. I said the figures for the World Championship were absolutely phenomenal, breaking records day in, day out, and they continue to be very, very big for ITV. And ITV offers that something a little bit different. It has the tournament spread through the year. I'll be very surprised, I have to say, if the UK Open is held in Butlins this year. I just can't see that taking place in Minehead in 2021. It'll probably have to be behind closed doors, maybe in Milton Keynes again. But ITV does a really, really good job of promoting the sport. And the fact that it is on free to air opens it up to quite a few more people. But I think they go hand in glove. To be honest with you, I think Sky and ITV work really, really well together in promoting the sport, and separate entities in doing the tournaments that they do throughout the year. But if the UK Open is held behind closed doors, that would be a shame, because for me that's one of the highlights of the year. And we always see some great stories generated, don't we, from all the stages played at Butlins. But I think circumstances dictate that it won't be in Butlins this year.
And lastly, we can't let you go without mentioning your beloved Everton. What a season they're having in what has been a very open Premier League season. When we're talking currently 6th, 2 points off the top four, are you starting to dream about the Champions League?
Well, what I really like about this is that all the pundits are talking about every other club apart from Everton. Leicester and Spurs, even Chelsea, who are below Everton at the moment, are still talked about as in the mix. United, City and Liverpool. But Everton aren't getting a single mention. Of course, they've got 2 games in hand now. Tough ones away at Villa and at home against Manchester City. Of course, postponed because of COVID protocols. But after so many years in the doldrums, let's dare to dream. And if Everton get in the Champions League, that would be absolutely phenomenal. I think what they've done really, really well is manage without, some of their big players in some of the big games. They've dropped points where it wasn't expected, and they picked up points where it wasn't expected as well. Whisper it quietly, but dare to dream as well.
Fingers crossed for that. Well, it's always enjoy having your company on the show, Stuart, so really appreciate your time, and best wishes for the Masters next week and for the whole of 2021.
Many thanks.
Hi everyone, just want to say thank you for voting me as manager and my company as management of the year. Dartscast do a fantastic job with the weekly podcast. Burton, Alex and Hanna are fantastic. Burton's a good close friends, so I hope there was no rigging of the votes there. But seriously, for everyone that voted, for myself, it's been an amazing year. As you can see here, I'm still hugging the Grand Slam trophy. Been to bed with it a few times as well. And for the manager or management to have one major winner in a year is fantastic. But to have 3 in 4 months is incredible. It's been a crest of a wave. I hope it carries on. Most of all, I hope everyone out there stays safe. At the moment, it's horrible, this pandemic. But again, everyone who's took the time to vote, it's a bit of fun, but we'll take it. It's fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. I wish you all a happy new year. Hopefully the darts will be back soon. And like I say, Hanna, Alex, Burton, keep up the good work. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks to Stuart for joining us, and we'll finish up the show. We've got another interview coming up shortly, but we'll finish up with some listener questions, and the first of them comes from Gareth Hughes, who says 668 battling for 29 tour cards at Q School. Do you think there should be some sort of criteria that needs to be met to enter, as way too many are applying now? What do you reckon?
In terms of that, I disagree that there's too many applying. Obviously, it's expensive to go to Q School, or at least by my standards, it's expensive. £450 isn't a drop in the bucket. Obviously, that has been put there to try to discourage people from turning up with the intention of having a giggle and trying their hand at it. Some people undoubtedly are showing up with no intention of winning a tour card, with the hopes that they play somebody that used to have a tour card that fell off the tour, that maybe will be the next big thing, a la Rob Cross, so that they can say that they played them in a match. But if that's what they want to spend their £450 on, that's what they want to spend their £450 on. I wouldn't spend my £450 on it because I have a hard time hitting a dartboard most of the time, because I have very bad depth perception, so I would not want to waste my money. But in terms of the financial boost it can give to darts in general, to PDC, to their events, to have that in there, the fact that people are willing to pay it to try out, the fact that it hasn't, as far as I'm aware, been a barrier for the people who are serious about Q School and want to go and want to try. And it's, interesting to see. Last year there was, as you've said before, record numbers, and we saw Aaron Beanie get a tour card, and he's won a match, 2 matches, 3 matches, something like that since then, and was very nice in his interview with us, and he might end up losing his tour card, but the point is he came through Q School, he had the chance the same way that the other people who come through Q School have a chance. And is everybody who gets a tour card going to become the next Rob Cross? Is everybody that gets a tour card going to become the next world number 1? But they need as equal a chance as anybody else to have that opportunity. And I think if that means that you have 800, 900 people who are willing to show up, and it's not keeping anybody, like I said, that maybe used to have a tour card out. I know some people are gifting gifting Q School as gifts to friends or as a donation from sponsors, if people have sponsors, especially like BDO players who are looking to move on, then whoever wants in should be allowed in. I get that it's a lot of people. I do like the format where they have split it into smaller amounts, because during a pandemic, having that many people in one room would be hugely problematic, and I get that it makes for really long days, so maybe even post-pandemic it would be beneficial to split it into 2 chunks just to make things easier. But the only other alternative would be creating some abstract criteria that might shut out the future stars and Rob Crosses of tomorrow, or setting the price so high that you force everybody to be phased out. And if you force everybody to be phased out because it's too expensive, then you've made no benefits there either. So I think it's fine as it is, and I think that their pre-pandemic split to ensure that there's less and less at random draws might be a good move going forward, but we'll see how it takes it when COVID's over. But for now, I'm fine with all of it.
Yeah, I'm going to say no as well, and I think £450, that price has gone up from what it started with in 2011. I think it was around maybe 300, 350, but some may say if you put the price up, that will deter more people from going. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out this year. As you mentioned, we've got the new format, which is mostly coming due to COVID and making sure that the numbers are lower in the venue at one time. I think it could be a format that you see carry on going into 2022 and beyond. You've got the tour card holders that have dropped off the tour and the top performers from the Challenge Tour and the Development Tour, they're going to get the bye through to the final stage, and then everyone else, they've got to start in the first stage. So you've kind of got that quality screening there. So the first stage, everyone goes in, apart from the players that I've mentioned there. Your players that are entering for a bit of fun to potentially play a big name from the past, you're going to lose them in the first stage. If I turned up and averaged 45, I'd be happy with that, but I know that I'm not going to be coming back for the final stage. I'm going to be going home after the first stage, and you'll lose a lot of players from that first stage. A lot of the players that do average in the 40s or the low 50s, because they're not going to pick up enough points to get through to that final stage. But I do like the idea of Q School, and I think as well, it's open to all. Anyone can pay the £450, turn up in the UK one, in the European one, and gives them a chance to become a professional, get onto the professional circuit, and it makes darts accessible, and that is the way it should be. It was one of the reasons why I got into darts, is because it's a sport which is so accessible. You've got all shapes and sizes, from people from all walks of life turning up to play darts in a pub or a club or whatever, and it's good that people have got that opportunity if they want to put the money forward. The numbers are going up, obviously not this year because of the virus, but you'd expect once this pandemic's over that Q School numbers will go back towards the numbers that they were in 2020, towards the 800 mark, maybe more. But I like it. I think it's good that the PDC can sell that dream to players, and it's a big money spinner for them as well. You've got £450 times 600, 700 people equals a lot of money for the PDC. So I'm happy with it staying as it is. And now we'll move on to our final guest on this week's show, and it is with the Darts Victoria President, Andrew Coburn. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the Darts Victoria President, Andrew Coburn. Thank you very much for the time, Andrew. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm very well, Alex. How's yourself?
Doing well, thank you. And as I say, thanks very much for your time. I know it's a busy week for you. The 2021 Darts Australia Grand Prix circuit kicks off in Morwell, Victoria this weekend. How excited are you to get things underway again?
We're thrilled to get darts back on the go, mate. It's been way too long without competitive darts in venues. There's been a lot of online darts going on, but face-to-face darts has been a good 8 to 10 months since we played it.
Just like the rest of the world, it was a COVID-interrupted 2020. Not a lot of tournaments have been able to go ahead, especially in person. When was the last in-person event you were able to put on?
Yeah, the last event we ran was this event in January last year. We were locked down in our state not long after that, so all weeknight darts, weekend darts, everything stopped around early February. So it's been a long time.
Definitely. So you're the first event of the season, the first one's back. Obviously, it throws up its challenges. What have been the big hurdles you've had to overcome to ensure that you can put this weekend's event on?
The biggest couple for us was the amount of people that we're allowed to have competing at any one time. We've got a restriction on us that we can't have any more than 50 people compete. We're hoping for more than that to show up, but to run the event, we've had to restrict the number of boards in the venue so that we, at a maximum, can only have 32 players playing at any time. And it's the COVID restrictions put on by the government that have been necessary to control things in Australia and in Victoria that has directed where we've gone. So with the lockdown we had, it got to the point where you couldn't have, I think, any more than 5 people in a room. At least now we can have, I think it's 1 person per 2 square metres if you have a way of recording who's in the venue. The 2 rooms that we're holding this in Morwell, the main room can hold 166 and the members area can hold 112 people. But at any time we're only allowed to have under 50 competing within those 2 rooms, so we've had to work to all that. We did have restrictions up until a week ago where we had to wear masks inside. That restriction has now been lifted, but we've still got the distance requirements. We'll be going through no handshakes, keeping your distance between each other during a match. So there's a few things we've still got to do to be able to bring darts back.
And I was looking at the Darts Australia website, it mentioned about the travel restrictions still being present across Australia, which may affect the number of entries. You mentioned there you might have to have a limit on how many you're allowed in, but 3 days away, I think, now from the event getting underway. How are the numbers looking at the moment? Are you hopeful of getting a full capacity of what you're allowed to have in?
We are hoping to get the capacity of what we're allowed to be playing at any time. There are still border restrictions coming into Victoria from certain areas of Australia. We are expecting some interstate players to make it across the border to come and play, which will be fantastic. But the restrictions on a lot of people, it's very hard for, if you do make it to Victoria to do it, when you go home, you've then got you may have to quarantine for 14 days when you get home. So there's a lot of people that can't come because they've got to quarantine when they go back home again. So it makes it very difficult.
Definitely. We'll come back onto recent times in a moment, but as I mentioned at the top, you're the president of Darts Victoria. Before taking that role, just tell me how you first discovered darts and where that took you.
I started playing darts when I was in my early 20s, just local darts. We then got my wife into darts and she made the state team. I didn't actually get involved in the administration of darts until probably 15 to 20 years ago. There was a couple of guys within the state who started up the Victorian Premier League darts. I got involved with that, which then led to state junior captain role, assistant contest director with Darts Victoria, vice president of Darts Victoria, and now president of Darts Victoria. So probably the last 15 to 20 years I've been involved and playing as well. I don't play as much now as what I did. Very hard to play with the administration side the way it is. But still love the game and love the people within the game.
Just on that role of president, what does that involve? What are the main things that you have to do in that role?
My role is to liaise with the state government bodies involved in sport and recreation within the state. We have our executive meetings once a month. We have delegates meetings a couple of times a year. I do try to attend every tournament that we run, whether it be a senior tournament, junior tournament, lower grade tournaments. I try and show my face at every event and make myself available to all the affiliates of Darts Victoria to help them with issues that they're having, or attend their meetings to let them know what's going on with darts.
What have the last 9 or 10 months been like running the ship for Darts Victoria during this pandemic? I'm assuming it's probably been the most challenging time you've had as the president.
Yes and no. It has been difficult. We haven't been able to have face-to-face meetings since February, so we got to learn how to use Zoom and Facebook meetings and Skype meetings a lot. The administration side of it hasn't slowed down at all. We've still been working hard in the background to keep the wheels moving. We've had a lot of help from a couple of people within darts to help give us contacts with state government bodies and organising things like this weekend. So yeah, it's been busy. Not quite as busy as it normally is. I normally would spend anywhere up to 30 weekends a year doing darts, and with COVID and the lockdown, that stopped completely. But yeah, I miss the contact with people within the sport. That's the biggest miss for me. But this weekend will be good to go.
Happy days. Well, watching from afar here in the UK, we can see that you guys in Australia, you've done very well in getting a grip of this virus. We're in the UK, we're back in another lockdown now. What's life been like in Victoria during the last year? Has it been really strict at times, and what's it like now?
Yeah, it got to the stage where we weren't allowed to travel any more than 5 kilometres from home. I work for a steel manufacturer here in Victoria, and we were even restricted to how many people we could have in the office. A lot of offices in Melbourne completely closed and everyone worked from home. There was a lot of people lost their jobs or had major restrictions in hours. We now have come out of the restriction. We can travel within the state wherever we want to go. There wasn't even a pub open during lockdown. You couldn't go to the pub. You could get takeaway meals. You couldn't go to a restaurant. It wasn't a very nice thing to live through, and I really feel sorry for you guys having to go through this sort of thing now. I'm not sure how tight the lockdown is over there, but we're not quite back to normal, but we're not far from it. Our biggest drama at the moment in Australia seems to be the international travellers that are coming in, that they're seeing infections coming in with them. But anybody who comes into Australia has to quarantine for 14 days in a motel or a hotel of the choice of the state government. So they're trying to keep on top of it that way.
Yeah, you mentioned the international travellers coming in, and a big story which has attracted a lot of attention in the news is, of course, the Australian Open tennis, which is going to happen in a few weeks' time. What have you made of all of that, with all the guys coming over and the quarantine and everything, and that event still getting to go ahead?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's been a lot of people in Australia who are overseas that haven't been able to get back home. And when you see the international tennis players coming in, there's a lot of people who are sort of, how can they come into Australia and the Australians can't get home? But I understand they're trying to keep the sport of tennis or any sort of sport going. There's been stories of players with COVID and people in their entourage with COVID. They are all in lockdown in certain hotels in Melbourne. They have training facilities. They've got restrictions that the player can go, but he's only allowed to have one person with him. It's going to be good to see the tennis go ahead. We've just finished up the Test cricket tour. The Indians were here playing Test cricket, and there was a lot of drama for them because they had a lot of injuries and having to get players in from India, and they had to quarantine before they could join the team. But they kept the Test series going. So hopefully, the tennis can go off without a hitch. The crowds are going to be way down on what they normally are. Even at the cricket, the MCG that can hold 100 to 105,000 people was restricted to, I think, 20,000. So there's been a lot of cricket go on earlier in the year with no crowd in the stand, and it is the weirdest thing to watch.
Back to the darts, a big success story in 2020 was, of course, Damon Heta moving over to the UK from Australia, winning the tour card and closing in on the top 50 after just a year on the tour. Simon Whitlock as well, 3 wins over Michael Van Gerwen on TV. How much coverage do those guys get back home now, all the success that they're having?
In the dart world, Damon does get a lot of coverage. Not so much Simon now, but we still claim Simon as an Australian, and he is. Major television networks, you don't really see it. When Simon was doing well a couple of years ago, you would occasionally see something on a sports thing, but we get all the darts on Foxtel over here, and there's a couple other pay TV ones that they do transmit the darts on, and they are well followed. So, yeah, they probably don't get the coverage they probably deserve, but we do see them. And as I said, in the dart world, Darts Australia, the DPA, which is another dart organisation over here, they both put up the results of these players. So, yeah.
Good to hear. Well, lastly, looking at the Darts Victoria website, 2021 calendar looks busy, which is great to see. As far as the darts scene in Victoria, how much do you hope to get back up and running in terms of tournaments and leagues this year?
We're hoping to be able to host everything that's on the calendar. The Darts Australia calendar is very busy as well. I think there's 15 Grand Prix events around Australia over the year. And we're hoping that all of these go ahead. At the moment, there's no reason why they won't. Other states started playing darts 6 months ago and in limited numbers, but we were the tightest lockdown that went on in Australia. So, yeah, the way we see it at the moment, everything should be good for a complete season of darts. And, yeah, fingers crossed it'll go ahead.
Definitely, fingers crossed for that. Well, Andrew, really appreciate your time and wish you all the best for this weekend and everything else for 2021. Hope it all goes well.
No worries, Alex. Thanks for the opportunity to have a chat, mate.
I would like to thank you all the fans for voting and to Dartscast for running the poll. Alex, Burton and Hanna do a great job. I'm honored to receive Miss Count of the Year. I'm call it the special one because even I don't know what I'm gonna do to do, and also the checkout of the year for my 158 to win the Grand Slam of darts, and I win my first major. Thank you once again, and everybody please stay safe out there, and let's beat this coronavirus together. Bye bye, see you soon.
And thank you to Andrew for joining us on the show this week. Our next listener question comes from John Thompson, and he says, what do you think the PDC have in mind for the UK Open, which is currently scheduled for March? Will they push it back so that we can have a proper event, or will they change the format given that they can't have any qualifiers due to, the pandemic? So it'll basically just be like a Pro Tour event on steroids. What are you thinking with that?
2020 was a year like no other. I mean, even at the start of the year, you had the BDO World Championship, wasn't at Lakeside. Of course, we were both there for that. And then you saw other events during the year, of course, because of the virus, get moved to different venues. You saw events get pushed back to later in the year. The World Cup, that was usually June time that we saw the World Cup. That got pushed back to, I think it was early November in the end. So we do know that the PDC, they are flexible. They know that during these times, during these strange times that we're living in, they're not going to have a regular calendar like we usually have. We used to, start of the year, seeing the BDO World Championship this week of the year. We usually see Q School, and that, of course, has been pushed back by a few weeks as well. So things are different than what they usually are. As we're talking, mid-January, we don't have a calendar by the PDC, and usually it's the end of December we get the full schedule for the next 12 months, what we're going to be seeing, what we're going to be talking about. But for good reason, we don't have that. And the UK Open is usually the first weekend of March. I think this year that would fall on around the 5th to the 7th of March. So we're talking 6 weeks away. We don't have any details on that at the moment. Could it still happen on that weekend? Yes, I think once we get Q School out the way, fingers crossed, then you will have your 128 tour card holders, and that does make up the bulk of the field for the UK Open. You also have the top 8 players that aren't tour card holders from the Challenge Tour and the Development Tour. That gets you up to 144, and then of course the 16 players from the Riley's qualifiers. That there's no chance we're going to see the Riley's qualifiers happen before the first weekend of March. So that is, filling those 16 spots with other players is a question mark whether they decide to do it or not. I'm not quite sure whether they just go with 144 instead. And who knows? As you say, we could see the UK Open take place later on in the year if they want to push it back to the second half of the year when there's more chance of getting fans in. Minehead's the venue for the UK Open, and it's such a fun weekend, but you do have a lot of darts fans there for that weekend in close proximity, which when we're talking now, you just can't see it happening in March. You can't see it happening in June. You might not even see it happening this year, but who knows with the vaccine and everything that's going on. But at the moment, I don't see it happening in March. unless they do it behind closed doors. And as I say, they do it with just 144 players. But we'll see. The PDC, as I say, they're always flexible. They're always looking to do different things. And if there is a possibility that we could see fans back in venues in the UK in the second half of the year, I think they maybe move the UK Open further back and give themselves the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and I think the flexibility they have is their greatest asset there. But again, it is just, those few qualifiers. And those few qualifiers are fun to watch, and it's a fun experience for the qualifiers to have. And it gives that event a little bit of something extra. But is it the crux of holding the event if you can't have it? If the answer is you can have the qualifiers or you can't have the event, it would be an interesting one there, because I know that the PDC are keeping their eyes on things. They watch things very closely with government guidelines and everything. They'll be hoping that they get people back in, but the rates of vaccination is going to play a role. The vaccinations are just stepping up a lot in this country, but there is a period of time between the two vaccines. They're still finishing up tests to make sure that all the new variants that have been created are still covered. They suspect that they're still covered, but there's still tests being run to make sure that the current vaccine doesn't need a booster vaccine to be rolled out before it's safe. And, it's one of those things that's going to take a significant chunk of time, because whereas there have been several million people receiving the vaccine thus far, it is a 2-shot vaccine. So if you have your first one, you're not vaccinated. You're on your way, but you're not vaccinated. So these things, depending on how quickly the government can arrange the supply and how quickly they can get the supply to people, will dictate the rest of the calendar overall. But I think it's probably safe to assume, if I were acting on behalf of the PDC, that you might not get people in this year, and you might need to plan on having things behind closed doors. But maybe they want to save a couple of their, big ticket items to later, on the off chance that they can get a small crowd in, or have some form of health passport system where if a group of people can show that they have had their 2 vaccines, they can buy tickets, because then you could at least fill up, say, your World Championships or whatever. But for now, will we know until closer to the time? Probably not. Could they shift it? 100% they could. Is there a huge benefit to be made in shifting it at this point in time? Probably not. But again, if they're thinking that lockdown needs to continue with all of these really strong mutations going on, and needs to happen all the way through March into, April, then I think they will. Not solely for the fact that, there won't be any qualifiers, but because how many times can you ask people to travel somewhere in the country during a lockdown period? It's just not feasible to coordinate that. Not everybody drives, so people having to get on trains and buses. Obviously, last year we saw some people turn up to events that have their tour cards and test positive, whether they're feeling great or not. And once you test positive, even if you feel fantastic and fine, that makes you a carrier who can affect other people. So it's going to have to be stringent. It's going to have to be tight. Everybody's going to have to be flexible. We're going to have to give it at least another year. It'll be interesting to see what comes through of there, but it's really going to depend largely on, I would assume, the government guidelines at the time. And if people are allowed to travel, it may still be behind closed doors, but it may make it easier to just have the event with those who qualified already.
Yeah, lots still up in the air. And I should mention as well, we're hoping to be joined by the PDC Tournament Director Graham Fairhurst on the show next week. So, John, we will put that question to Graham as well to see what he has to say. And final question then before we go from our listeners comes from Liam Kenny, who says, was it easier for Gezi to win majors as there was no expectation of being a youth prospect like the likes of Michael Smith?
For me, I don't think it's easier. I understand that it's not got the expectations. So in that sense, you might say, oh, well, if you don't expect that this is going to happen or that you have to win it, you've got so much of a weight on your shoulders. But considering how vocal he is and what I hate to use this word, it makes me sound ancient, a character he is, really. I think he kind of set himself up for a certain amount of expectations, a certain amount of, if you trash talk or talk big, you're going to have to back it up. And if you don't, you're going to look real small in those cases. And he loves to show off and roar and make a big scene about everything. So it's certainly part of, that rugby background has that extra, intensity to it that maybe you don't find in darts, where it's kind of struck people the wrong way. But I think in that being part of his playing style and rubbing so many people the wrong way, it set a kind of expectation of his own. Yeah, he didn't start in it as a kid, and people didn't do like they did with Max Hopp, and he's going to be the future of Germany, and he's German's number one, and Max had varying degrees of success in that regard, or Michael Smith with his career. But it has to be said that he, especially Gerwin, of all the people that you could mention and ask that question of, Gerwin really probably set his own expectations super high, not even if he necessarily wanted them to be set extra high, but just by having such a strikingly different personality from everybody else. And then once everybody tells you, oh, you can't do it, you're just all talk, then, well, nobody ever likes to just roll over when somebody tells them anything. They prefer to prove them wrong. So I think he created a huge amount of expectation in himself. Other people didn't have it, but it shouldn't ever be underplayed how much our own thoughts and expectations for ourselves play in our games. It doesn't matter if you came up through the system and everybody believes in you. If you don't think that that's your match to win and you don't win it, I suspect you won't beat yourself up as much as if you've told everybody on the planet you're going to crush the holy heck out of your opponent, a la MVG and his, trash talk that he likes to try to roll out from time to time just to kind of stoke the fires of interest with things. When you call somebody boring or you roar on stage every time you make a big hit, you're going to create a lot of talk, and that talk will inevitably create a lot of expectation in yourself. Did he do it for that purpose? Did he do it for the purpose of the more people that are actively, aggressively against you? There's always been the thing of, does he do better when the crowd's booing him? So he plays his game as he plays it. He stokes his fires as he plays it. I think you could make a case that other people, it's easier to win majors without the expectation, but I don't think you can make it specifically for Gerwin Price.
Yeah, it's a great question, and you make a really good point there. It's different expectations on different players, and Gerwin Price, I think if you'd have said, was it easy for him to win the Grand Slam final 2018 when you've got the whole crowd booing you like they were in Wolverhampton, that controversial game against Gary Anderson, he'd have said that was not easy at all. And even Michael Smith, and it's an interesting case study with Michael because he turned 30 last September, but he's been around for a long time. He was playing in PDC events from the age of 17 and knocked out Phil Taylor in the World Championship when he was 23. Just without looking, I think he may well be the youngest player to beat Phil Taylor in a World Championship without going and checking. But things like that, beating Phil Taylor, who was still right at the top of the game at the time, becoming the PDC World Youth Champion 2013, winning other events, it does raise those expectations, and especially of young players as well. And everyone does it. If you see a young player win a big event, you think, one of the first things you think is, wow, how far are they going to go? Are they going to be the next Michael Van Gogh? Are they going to be the next Phil Taylor? Are they going to be the next big star in the game? And as I mentioned, with Michael Smith winning the PDC World Youth Championship, it doesn't necessarily say that you win that event, you're going to go on and have a big career in the game, or at least not yet anyway. I mean, you look at the first player that got their name on that trophy, Aaron Monk, and he beat Michael Van Gogh in the final 2011. James Hubbard, he's won the title as well. And you even look to the BDO as well. When we first started this show at the start of 2017, one of the first players that we were talking about was Justin Vanskal, winning the BDO World Youth Championship at the Lakeside, and he won it back-to-back years, 2017 and 2018. He won a BDO ranking title, I think, when he was only 18 years old, beating Glenn Durrant in the final. And since then, we've not seen him make that breakthrough. But he's only 20, and he's one of those players that is going to be playing in Q School. But it just goes to show that however well these players do when they're younger, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to go keep that progression going, a clear path to the top. So as far as Michael Smith, he's still got a lot of years in the game, and he is still looking for that big title. He's got close on a lot of occasions, and I think there is a lot of pressure on him now to get over that line. He's got to a World Championship final, World Match Play final, Premier League final, other big finals as well, and he's not got over the line. And we saw it a month ago at the World Championship when he lost to Jason Lowe, and he was really animated on the stage. He was really disappointed with himself, frustrated, and the longer that goes on, the more frustration there is. So different pressures, I think, different expectations for people. Was it easier for Gerwin? I think maybe, yeah, not having that pressure coming through as a youngster, but nevertheless, there was still a lot of pressure on him to get over the line and win those big titles. And one thing that my co-host Burton usually says at the end of the show, I'll have to fill in for him this week, but it is anything else for this week?
Nope, I would say everybody make sure that if you have any guests that you want for 2021, that you let us know. Obviously, we did the Legend series to, reach out to people, not only to hear those awesome stories, but also it's nice to, when everybody's stuck inside, give some people a call, make sure everything's going well. So if you've got any names for anything, just send them through and we'll see who we can attempt to get a hold of, and see where that can take us through this year. And thank you for joining us last year, and hopefully this year we will see some progress for the better in darts. But we know after last year that luckily, amongst all the sports in there, that we will see some darts. So if anything, enjoy your darts this year.
Yes, definitely. And if you guys want to suggest someone to come on the show, tweet us at Weekly Dartscast. We've had one of our listeners email us, weeklydartscast@gmail.com, with a few suggestions as well. So if you want to do that, by all means do so. And thank you, Hanna, for all the great work that you do for us. And thanks for joining me in the place of Burton this week. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to our guests. I should give a shout out to our sponsor, Low 6, who of course present this show. If you want to download the PDC Picks app and get involved in that, should mention you've got to be 18 plus, UK residents only, T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly. BeGambleAware.org. They've got a free contest on there at the moment for the Masters. That's coming up a week on Friday, the first round. They've got a £500 contest, free to enter. So if you guys want to go on there and make your picks for the first round, get involved. We'll be back next week to make some of our picks. So if you want to follow them or if you want to go differently, no Burton as I mentioned, so leaves me to do the sign off. So I'll say stay safe, take care, and bye for now.